On our 7th wedding anniversary, I prepared a romantic dinner under candlelight, the bottle of red wine already set. But then my husband walked in hand with the daughter of our former housemaid. She's pregnant. It's my child. We're getting a divorce. The plate in my hand shattered. Before we continue the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If it were you, standing in the middle of your anniversary dinner, hearing the word divorce, along with the news that the baby isn't yours, what would you do? I placed the grilled beef plate on the table, the scent of herbs and sauce rising into the air, mixing with the amber glow of the candlelight. Today was my 7th wedding anniversary with David. I had spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen, carefully preparing each dish, picking the red wine we'd saved from that old trip to Italy. I wanted tonight to be sweet, just me and him. But then Ava Brown showed up, holding a bouquet of bright red carnations. "Happy anniversary," she said, her voice sharp and bright, her eyes sparkling under the light. I froze, my smile stiff on my lips, but still politely invited her to sit. Something felt off. The way she placed the bouquet in the center of the table, like she wanted to take over the whole scene, the way her silk dress hugged her body, flickering in the candlelight. I tried to brush away the unease, telling myself I was overthinking. Just as I put the last dish down, David, sitting across from me, suddenly spoke. "Sit down, Claire." "I need to tell you something." His voice was low, cold, without the usual teasing. His eyes locked onto mine, sharp as a blade. Ava sat close beside him, her pink lips slightly swollen, her cheeks flushed. Her fingers kept spinning the porcelain spoon, bright red nails glinting in the dim light. "What's so serious?" I said, trying to keep my voice light, though my heart was pounding faster. "Sounds like the police are about to interrogate me or something." I sat down, looking at David, waiting, but his eyes drifted away toward Ava. There was a brief, awkward pause, like he was deciding something. "So, here's the thing." He cleared his throat, tapping his finger on the table, a habit he had when anxious. I waited, my breath tight, not even sure why. He inhaled deeply, then looked me straight in the eye, his voice slow, as if each word had to cut through the air. "Claire, I want a divorce." The sentence sliced through everything. The meat sat cooling on the table. The red wine bottle remained unopened. I stared, my mouth speaking before I could think. "What did you just say? There's a stranger here. Aren't you afraid of being judged?" I thought he was joking, like one of those inappropriate pranks he sometimes pulled in front of friends. But his eyes held no amusement, just coldness and a flicker of worry. David pressed his lips together, tapping faster now. "I know this is sudden," he said, glancing at Ava. She stopped spinning the spoon, her fingers stiffening, her eyes glinting like she was waiting. "I've thought about this for a long time, Claire. I don't want to lie to you anymore." He paused again, took another breath, then spoke, his voice like a knife. "Ava and I are together." It felt like lightning struck through my skull. "You and who?" My voice cracked, sharp, out of control. I looked over at Ava, and she lifted her head. Those sparkling eyes of hers no longer held joy, but challenge. Her lips curled, not into a smile, but into a sharp curve, like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. The room tilted. Ava Brown, daughter of the housemaid who worked for my family for over 10 years. Quinn, with her frail hands, scrubbing floors, doing laundry, trying to earn money to treat her bedridden husband. Young Ava used to be scruffy, skinny. My parents pitied her, supported her from elementary school. Then my dad's factory went bankrupt, we drowned in debt, and Quinn left. Ava had just entered college back then, and even though my own family had fallen apart, I kept sending her money through all 4 years. To me, Ava was the shy, fragile little sister, 6 or 7 years younger than me, always gentle, always quiet. I never once thought, never even imagined, that she and David could have any connection whatsoever. I looked at the two of them sitting there, David, my husband of 7 years, and Ava, the girl I once saw as a younger sister, now sitting side by side, like I was the outsider. David was holding Ava's hand, their fingers tightly interlocked, like he was making a statement no one could deny. He looked at me, eyes dodging slightly, but his voice was firm. Ava went for a checkup last week. She's pregnant. The baby is mine. The words hit like a punch to the chest, so hard I felt my ribs tighten. My head spun, trying to piece together the shards. Pregnant. A baby. Yours. I wanted to scream, to flip the dinner table, but my body just sat there, frozen. The grilled beef had gone cold, and the herb scent now made me want to throw up. The red wine bottle I'd picked out to celebrate now felt like some cruel joke. David lowered his head, avoiding my gaze, but kept going. His voice lower now, like he was trying to convince himself. I know this is cruel, Claire. But I can't let my child be born labeled illegitimate. He paused, took a breath, like he needed courage. We've been married 7 years, and you're still not pregnant. Plus, Ava's only 23. She's given up a bright future to be with a married man like me. I can't betray that. He looked up at me, and for the first time, there was something like pleading in his eyes. I hope you can accept it. Give me and Ava a chance. When we divorce, I'll try to give you as much of the assets as I can. Every word he spoke was a blade, stabbing through my heart, shredding the 7 years I thought were filled with love. Birth control. He knew, we both agreed on it, because we wanted to focus on our careers, to build the company from scratch. Then my father's factory collapsed. Debts piled up. Everything got chaotic, and we kept postponing having kids. Tonight, I had planned to open that wine, sit down with him, talk about starting over, about a child, about the future. But he had a different surprise prepared, a sharp knife, and Ava was holding it with him. I felt the blood boiling inside me, but strangely, when the rage peaked, I didn't scream, didn't cry. I laughed. The sound made David freeze, his eyes flickering, and Ava stopped spinning her spoon, her fingers stiff on the table. Is that so? I said. So how much of the assets were you planning to give me? The company, what he now called assets, was something he and I built together. The sleepless nights writing proposals, the endless days chasing down partners, the times I swallowed my pride just to sign a deal. David opened his mouth, about to say something, but Ava suddenly tugged at his sleeve, her slender fingers gripping tightly, like she was afraid he might promise too much. She smiled, sweet but fake, her voice honey-coated. David, why didn't you talk to me first before suddenly telling her about us? You're making it seem like I'm the mistress who broke up your marriage. I laughed again. Mistress? She's carrying my husband's baby. If that's not a mistress, what is? All those years my family supported her, we were just raising a traitor. I looked at her, those eyes brimming with tears, but behind them a smugness, like she'd just won a big bet. Ava stood up abruptly, walked right up to me. She bowed deeply, her curly hair falling over half her face. I'm sorry, Claire. Her voice trembled, tears spilling down her cheeks, eyes red like a frightened little animal. I know no matter what I say, you won't forgive me. It's my fault. I wronged you. She sniffled, her shoulders shaking, but I saw it, the flicker in her eyes. Not regret, but challenge. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I couldn't help falling in love with David. I stared at the girl in front of me, sparkling tears, but a look full of pride. Why? I shouted, my voice so loud it startled even me. There are millions of men in this world. Why my husband? Ava raised her head, her face flushed red, but her voice didn't waver. Claire, your family helped me for years, and I'm truly grateful. But love is selfish. I can't let gratitude stop me from following my heart. She paused. Besides, you and David have been married for 7 years and still have no children. With such a big legacy and dream, shouldn't someone be there to carry it on? Her words hit me like a slap. My whole body trembled, my hand lifted, ready to slap her into reality. But David jumped in immediately, blocking her. His shoulders tense, his eyes ice cold. Claire, this is all my fault. If you're angry, aim it at me. Don't blame Ava. She's innocent. Innocent? My chest tightened with pain. I let out a bitter laugh. Innocent. What are you saying? That you raped her? Then why didn't she go to the police? Why is she willing to have your baby? You two are a perfect match, a bastard and a homewrecker. Ava's face went from red to pale white. David looked at me, his gaze growing cold, like the 7 years of love between us had just evaporated. Claire, have some decency, he said. Don't say such vicious things. Ava is pure, kind. Nothing like someone like you. Out chasing deals day and night, rubbing shoulders with men in business meetings. Who knows what you've done behind my back? If we're talking shamelessness, who could top you? His words cut like acid, every ounce of hidden contempt spilling out in that one sentence. It was like a bomb went off in my head. My ears rang. All those networking events, the forced smiles to keep business alive, the awkward handshakes, all for the company we built together. He knew that, but now he used it to drag me through the mud. Rage took over, burning away every shred of logic. I grabbed the glass on the table, and with no control, I hurled it at David. The glass grazed his eyebrow, shattering on the floor, the piercing sound echoing like thousands of needles stabbing the silence. The shards sparkled under the candlelight, like my heart, shattered and razor-sharp. "David, you bastard!" I screamed, my voice cracking, no longer sounding like my own. Blood trickled from his brow, a thin line running down his cheek. He looked at me, eyes filled with shock and fury, his lips parting like he wanted to speak. But I didn't let him. I slammed the dinner table with all my strength. Plates of beef, wine glasses, the bouquet of red carnations. Everything crashed onto them. The sound of breaking porcelain and falling food like a chaotic symphony. "Get out! Both of you, get out of my house!" I shrieked, my voice hysterical, like 7 years of buried pain had finally exploded. Ava cowered behind David, clutching her belly, eyes wide with fear. David shouted back, voice shaking with rage. "You're insane! You're a goddamn lunatic!" He grabbed Ava's hand and yanked her toward the door. "I don't even know what I ever saw in you." Ava was right. You're just a bitter, angry woman. He pulled her out, footsteps heavy, shoes pounding the wooden floor. The door slammed shut behind them, like a hammer straight to my chest, knocking the breath out of me. After a while, the room fell into silence. A heavy silence, like a mysterious black hole, invisible but swallowing me whole. I felt drained, my legs weak, and collapsed onto the chair. I wanted to cry, to scream, but my eyes stung, and not a single tear would fall. My mind went blank, like every thought had been swept away by the storm that had just passed. David, the man who once gently held me and promised to always stay by my side, had just torn off the mask, revealing something vile underneath. Ava, the girl my family had supported for over 10 years, who always claimed she saw me as a sister, was now clinging to my husband, hand in hand, like I had never even existed. The image of the two of them, fingers tightly interlocked, flashed in my head. I wanted to lash out, to scream, but my throat felt blocked. Not a sound would come out. My heart clenched so tightly, even my teeth began to tremble. We had gone through so much together. In the early days of the startup, our tiny office was stacked with paperwork. We pulled countless all-nighters to finish contracts, and I took on everything I could to save money. The company, the one David now called Assets, was built with our blood and tears. When we got married, We had nothing but an idea and determination. My family owned a small garment export workshop, but it had nothing to do with the software industry we had chosen. My dad's connections were useless in this field. David, always proud, never lowered himself to negotiate. So I went out to chase clients, meet partners, while he stayed behind to handle the technical side. Back then, to get contracts, I attended countless networking events and business conferences. Sometimes I'd run into clients who deliberately made things hard, dragging me into endless conversations. But I was good at talking, better than most men. At the negotiation table, most people still treated each other with respect. Still, there were always a few who took advantage of the situation. I felt humiliated, and at home, I would confide in David. Just a few words, just a bit of frustration. He would hold me and say he'd never let me down. And yet now, those moments when I was most vulnerable, he used them as knives to stab me in the back. The smell of food hung heavy in the air, the beef cold, the sauce smeared across the floor, shattered glass everywhere. I just sat there, frozen, like a forgotten statue. The piercing sound of the phone cut through my thoughts. The screen lit up. Mother-in-law's name. Patricia. The ringing stopped, then started again. 3 times in a row, like it was demanding I answer. Reluctantly, I slid to pick up the call. "Claire, what's wrong with you?" Patricia's voice rang out, laced with irritation. I replied wearily, my voice hoarse. "What is it?" "Tomorrow is your father-in-law's rehab appointment at the hospital," she said, bossy and complaining. "Don't forget. Be there early to help me get things ready. My father-in-law had surgery 2 years ago to remove a brain tumor. It damaged his nerves. He struggled to move the left side of his body, couldn't speak clearly. Every week, he had to go for physical therapy and massage. David had only gone with him twice, other than the first time. For the past 2 years, I'd been the one arranging the finances, setting the appointments, and taking him with Patricia. She spent her time playing, meeting friends, hiring caregivers, who all eventually quit because of how impossible she was. In the end, I was the one left handling everything. 2 sessions a week at the hospital, 3 more at the clinic. Now he could finally walk short distances without a cane. I replied coldly, "I'm busy tomorrow." She immediately blew up, her voice shrill over the phone. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Don't you have any sense of responsibility?" She didn't used to be like this. But 3 years ago, after my dad's factory went bankrupt, her attitude changed. She became bossy, always complaining I wasn't doing enough for the family. I stayed quiet, my hand gripping the phone, nails digging into my skin. She kept going, louder than before. "I don't care what you have planned. Cancel it. Your priority is getting your father-in-law to therapy. We already agreed on this schedule." Her tone was forceful, brazen, like I was her maid. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the fury boiling inside me. "Legally speaking," I said, my voice so cold it startled even me, "only David is obligated to care for his parents. I have no such obligation, and that's while I'm still his wife." She went silent, gasping over the phone. Then her voice came back, shaking with rage. "Claire, you'll regret this. I'm not letting this go." Then she hung up, furious. I turned off my phone, the screen going dark, like my heart in that moment. I sat there, in the wreckage of what was supposed to be an anniversary dinner, all through the night. What a joke. I had dreamed of a sweet evening with David, and it ended in a broken performance. As dawn crept in, weak sunlight filtered through the curtains. I called a cleaning service, then stepped into the bathroom, letting cold water splash on my face, washing away the thick smell of herbs and the memories of the night before. I changed into a new dress, a fitted navy one. Just as I grabbed my bag, ready to leave and head to my parents' house, the front door slammed open. David stormed in. "Claire, how could you be so rude?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet house. "That's my mother! How dare you speak to her like that?" His finger pointed straight at me, like I was a criminal on trial. I rolled my eyes, searching my memory. Rude? All I did was tell the truth, that I had no legal obligation to care for his parents. But David's anger burned like fire, never needing a reason to ignite. I didn't bother replying. I walked to the shelf, grabbed my bag and car keys. The sound of my heels clicking on the wooden floor was louder than any argument, each step a refusal to engage. He lunged forward, blocking my path. "You're coming with me to apologize to my mom now." I shoved his arm away, a surge of rage fueling my strength. "You're insane!" I snapped, eyes locked on his, unflinching. I bent down, pulling out my high heels from the cabinet. He still wouldn't back off. His hand gripped my arm, fingers digging into my skin like iron clamps. "Claire! Divorce is between us. Don't take it out on my parents. They've always treated you like their own daughter. Now come apologize." "Daughter?" I laughed out loud. "A daughter who gets ordered around like a maid, who's criticized for not being devoted enough?" Fury flooded my chest. I raised one of the heels in my hand, the sharp point aimed at his forehead like a knife ready to strike. "I'm counting to 3, I said, my voice cold as ice. "Let go of me." 1, 2. Before I could say 3, I lifted my arm, the heel glinting under the light. David shoved my arm away and stepped back, his eyes filled with both anger and fear, like I was a wild animal let loose. "You've lost your mind," he shouted, voice trembling, though he tried to sound tough. "You're such a bitter woman. I have to divorce you." I stood up straight and took a deep breath. "Fine. Let's divorce. I want 70% of the assets." My voice was calm. "No way!" David spat, his face turning red, veins bulging at his temples. "What makes you think you deserve that?" "I'll give you half, no more. Take it, or we go to court." He stood there, shoulders stiff, like he was guarding an empire he thought belonged only to him. I looked at the man in front of me, once my husband, now just a stranger. My heart felt like ash after a fire. Half? That's what he called generosity? I said nothing, only stared at him in silence. "Fine then," I said, steady, unwavering. "We'll go to court." With that, I grabbed my bag. The car keys clinked in my hand. I walked out and slammed the door behind me. The sound of it echoed like a declaration, leaving David and the shattered home in my wake. I drove to my parents' house, but when I got there, it was completely still. The door locked tight. Not a single person in sight. It had been over 2 weeks since I last visited. Too busy with work, with David, with all the piled-up responsibilities. I called my dad, only to find out my mom had been hospitalized with pneumonia caused by the flu. They hadn't told me because they didn't want me to worry. I rushed straight to the hospital. Unexpectedly, I ran into my in-laws in the parking lot on their way to physical therapy. My father-in-law sat slouched in his wheelchair. When he saw me, his expression stayed neutral. But Patricia folded her arms and sneered. "Well, well, Claire." "Feeling guilty now? Came to apologize, did you?" Her voice was sweet, but dripping with sarcasm. "If you're ready to admit your mistakes, David's father and I might consider forgiving you. If not, don't expect to be welcomed back into our family welcomed. Like I was ever desperate to belong to that family." I smirked, my eyes scanning over her. "If there's something wrong with your head, might as well get it checked while you're already at the hospital." I didn't look back, walked straight toward the elevator. Behind me, Patricia shouted, her voice shrill and full of curses, but I didn't care. Her words were just air, meaningless. Not even a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. David's name lit up on the screen. No doubt Patricia had called him to complain. I blocked his number immediately, my finger sliding across the screen, cutting the cord without hesitation. I had no patience left to hear his whining. Back when I was still his wife, I put up with his parents out of duty. But now, he was just a cheater. And he thought I'd still bow to his family? The elevator took me up to the 12th floor, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. As soon as I saw my mom lying in the hospital bed, my nose stung. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were sick?" My voice trembled, on the verge of breaking. She smiled faintly, her frail hand gently patting mine. "Telling you would only make you worry. What good would that do?" The care here is fine, and it's just pneumonia. A few days on, IV, and I'll be okay. Just pneumonia? I looked at her. So thin, so tired, her eyes sunken and dark. My dad stood beside her, his shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of these past days alone. I knew it wasn't just pneumonia. Using the excuse of going to buy something, I left the room and went straight to the doctor. My mother had a large polyp in her lung. It had already been removed. The biopsy came back. Early stage lung cancer. The doctor reassured me that treatment was underway, and that as long as she kept a strong mindset and ate properly, she'd recover. But his words didn't ease the guilt. I was her daughter, yet I didn't even know she was seriously ill. She had surgery, was hospitalized, and only my dad was by her side. Meanwhile, I was too busy taking care of my father-in-law, of a family that called me their daughter, but treated me like a maid. I sank onto the stairwell, back pressed against the cold wall. 7 years of marriage. What did I get? A cheating husband, in-laws who used me like a tool. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and returned to my mom's room, forcing a smile like everything was fine. Over the next few days, I stayed at the hospital with her. She kept urging me to go home, her voice soft but firm. "Your dad's here. He's enough." I understood what she meant. She didn't want me neglecting my own family. But I wasn't ready to talk about the divorce yet. I just told her things with David's family were settled, and now I only wanted to take care of her. I never expected David would show up, let alone bring Ava to the hospital room. The door swung open, and they walked in hand like some cheap romance movie couple. I froze, my heart twisting. My mom looked confused, her eyes darting between us, clearly not understanding what was happening. David panicked, tried to pull his hand away, but Ava clung to him, fingers digging in. I shot up from my seat, shoved them back toward the door, keeping my voice low. "Whatever this is, say it at home. Don't bring it here and upset my mom." I tried to stay calm. I didn't want her to hear any of it. Ava glanced at me, her voice deliberately loud. "Divorce isn't something to be ashamed of." "Why hide it? What are you so afraid of?" I snapped, eyes locked on David. "Get your woman out of here!" My finger trembled, but I stood firm, not backing down. Ava didn't give up. She stepped closer, her voice charged, like she was the one wronged. "I'm just here to ask one thing. You want a big share of David's assets? Based on what? He's the one who runs the company. You're just a housewife. Everything you spent, didn't he earn it? What right do you have to ask for so much? You only think you can take advantage because he's kind and easy to push around. Well, let me tell you, with me around, forget about it." She talked like she was the real wife, here to confront the mistress about stealing what's hers. From the hospital bed, my mother gasped, her voice weak and scared. "Claire, what's going on?" She sounded frightened, like she could sense something terrible about to unfold. I turned back, trying to keep my voice gentle, almost pleading. "David, Ava, my mom just had surgery. She can't be upset. Can we please talk outside?" At that moment, the hospital room door swung open. My father stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, but his eyes were cold, cold like forged steel. He paused for just a moment, looked at the three of us tangled in tension, and it was as if he saw everything, understood it all in a single glance. His eyes locked directly on Ava, sharp and merciless. Ava instinctively shrank back, her hands that had been gripping my arm quickly let go. She lowered her head, curly hair falling over half her face, but I could see her cheeks turning red. Not from anger, but shame, as if she had just been stripped bare under a spotlight. My father's voice cut through the air. "How did your parents raise you, Ava?" "My family supported your education. And this is what you do? Destroy my daughter's marriage? Do you have no sense of decency left?" He stood there, tall and immovable, like a mountain, his gaze full of disappointment and contempt. Ava trembled slightly, her lips moving as she tried to defend herself, voice barely more than a whisper. Uncle, love can't be forced. David and it was mutual. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, and I'm truly grateful for what you did for me." Her words trailed off, weak and empty. My father let out a sharp breath through his nose. He didn't bother replying. He turned to me, and while his eyes softened, they still held a razor edge, heavy with sympathy. "What are you planning to do?" His voice was cold, but I could hear the ache underneath, like a father witnessing the betrayal of his child. I let out a bitter laugh, brittle as broken seashells under crashing waves. "His lover's already pregnant, and he brought her all the way here." "Divorce it is." The words came out tasting like ash. My father nodded, never looking away from me. "And what about the assets?" His tone was steady, but it carried the weight of someone who knows exactly what has been lost. "I want 70% of everything earned during the marriage," I replied. My father nodded again, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "Fair. The seed money that started that company was mine. Giving him 30% is already generous." His words dropped like a verdict, final, unchallengeable, echoing through the tense air of the hospital corridor. Ava instantly burst out, voice shrill with anger. "Why?" "That company belongs to David. What gives you the right to take that much?" But my father only glanced at her once, making her freeze. She pressed her lips tight, left mumbling in frustration. Then suddenly, my father raised his hand, finger pointing straight at her face, his voice low but full of power. "Shameless thing! This has nothing to do with you!" David immediately rushed forward, pulling Ava behind him. "Sir, if you have something to say it to me. There's no need to insult her." He tried to sound firm, but I could hear the tremble in his voice. He still respected my father, not just out of politeness, but because of the large sum my dad had invested in the early days of the company. Without that money, there wouldn't be a company at all. My father stared at David, eyes like ice, and spoke without mercy. "David, out of respect for the fact that you were once my daughter's husband, I don't want to make this uglier than it already is. Take your 30% and walk away. If you don't, I swear, I'll burn every last dollar if I have to, but I'll make sure you never live in peace. You know I don't bluff. If it comes down to both sides losing everything, so be it. But I will never let you bully my daughter." David's face went pale, his lips pressed tightly together. He knew my father well, a man who never said things he didn't mean. 1 month later, David and I officially signed the divorce papers, the agreement laid neatly on the lawyer's desk. As part of the settlement, we split our assets. David wanted to keep the software company. He was determined to keep it. He proposed using all his remaining assets to buy out my shares. I nodded without hesitation. "Fine. Just make sure you pay me what's mine." I didn't want the company. I didn't want the memories tied to him. I just wanted a clean, final break. David scrambled to gather the funds, borrowing over $5 million to wire me the full amount. 3 months after the divorce, the deal was done. He moved out of our old house and rented an apartment, hoping the company would soon turn profitable so he could bounce back. As for me, I used part of the money to buy a new villa, nestled on a gentle hillside, with large windows overlooking a lush green valley. Every morning, sunlight poured through. I used to think divorce would leave an empty hole, a wound that wouldn't heal. But work swept me away, like a river pulling sorrow downstream. I had no time to dwell on sadness. I took my parents on vacation, gazing at the blue waters of Florida, laughing over simple meals. Back home, I decorated my villa by hand, painting the walls a creamy white, planting roses and hydrangeas in the garden. Day by day, I felt myself come back to life, like a tree being watered after a long winter. Before I knew it, over half a year had passed. At the end of that year, I heard Ava had given birth. Twins, a boy and a girl. David threw a grand party at a luxury restaurant. Twinkling lights, wine flowing freely, inviting colleagues and even mutual friends. I didn't seek out this news, but it came to me anyway, like an uninvited breeze. Friends told me, their voices full of concern, but I just smiled. took a sip of coffee, and felt calm, like the surface of a still lake. I didn't care. I was too busy building a future of my own. I sat down with my father and spread out plans across the breakfast table. I had decided to revive his old career, launching a factory that made thermalware and yoga apparel. This way, we could sell year-round. This time, we would focus on the domestic market. My dad, with decades of experience managing factories and clothing production, became our manufacturing advisor. He guided each step, from fabric selection to optimizing the production line. I invested boldly, hiring two talented young designers who brought in yoga outfits that were soft, form-fitting, and colored like summer sunlight. I built a sales team and split it into two branches, offline and online. Offline, we targeted supermarkets and shopping malls, places where customers could feel the fabric with their own hands. Online, I focused on wholesale and dropshipping, supplying influencers, Amazon, and Shopify. Not retail, just scale, speed, and efficiency. Every morning, I woke up, checked emails, joined meetings with the team, breathed in the scent of new fabric from the factory, and felt like I was building a new empire. Maybe because it was so familiar, the company ran smoothly. Unlike David's software business, where each deal was worth hundreds of thousands or millions, apparel was essential, steady, long-term flow. Another winter arrived, and thanks to a few Instagram posts from influencers, my thermalware suddenly blew up in sales. Online orders poured in like falling snow, piling up on my desk, forcing me to triple the number of factory workers. The sewing machines ran at full speed. I stood in the middle of the factory, holding a piece of soft fleece in my hand, smiling as rolls of fabric transformed into thermal tops, ready for the harsh winter ahead. Right before Christmas, a friend dropped by the factory to place a big order as gifts for her staff. She took a sip of hot cocoa, then leaned in, lowering her voice like she was about to spill a secret. "Hey, Claire, guess what? I just heard David's dad passed away 2 days ago. The smell in that house was awful." I froze. The coffee cup in my hand tilted slightly, a few drops rippling onto the table. Even though my former father-in-law had nerve damage and difficulty walking, his health had still been stable. How could he die so suddenly? I furrowed my brows, my voice soft but curious. "What happened?" My friend shrugged. "Apparently, he fell." Patricia left him home alone, too busy taking care of Ava and the twins. She only came home once a week, pre-cooked some meals and stuffed them in the fridge, told him to reheat them himself. When he fell, there was no one around. The neighbors smelled something, called the police. They broke in, and he was already dead. The whole house reeked. Her voice faded, like even she shuddered at the image. She raised her eyebrows, her voice more dramatic now. "But that's not even the craziest part." The funeral wasn't even over before Patricia already had a new boyfriend. Word is, she'd been waiting for him to die. "She's been having an affair for 2 years." She paused and looked at me, like waiting for a reaction. I remembered how, during those 2 years when my father-in-law was sick, Patricia was always decked out in expensive dresses, coming and going at all hours. Maybe she'd been living for herself for a long time, abandoning her disabled husband. I looked out the window, where snow was falling quietly, and thought about David. He turned out to be so much like his mother. It was eerie, the kind of people who'd throw everything away for desire. But this was something I just listened to and let pass. Whatever happened with my ex-husband's family, it had nothing to do with me anymore. 2 months later, David showed up at the garment factory. The security guard didn't recognize him, just took down his information when he said he was here to check out some products, then let him through the gate. I was in my office reviewing new design drafts. A young designer, her hair tied up high and her eyes sparkling, was pointing at a stretch fabric, excitedly talking about the seam lines. Suddenly, the door opened. David walked in. I looked up, my gaze cold as stone. "What are you doing here?" My voice carried no emotion, like I was addressing a stranger. David gave a smile, but it was stiff, like it had been glued onto his face. Claire. He cleared his throat, hands in his pockets, trying to act casual. I told the designer to go back and revise the draft. I'd look at it again later. David stepped forward and quietly closed the door behind him. He stood there, the same man who once arrogantly demanded a divorce, now slightly hunched, dark circles under his eyes, as if the past few months had drained the life out of him. Claire, I came to ask for a favor, he said, his voice low, with a trace of pleading. I said nothing. I just looked straight at him. David forced a smile, rubbing the back of his neck, and kept going. My company's in trouble. Some major contracts expire next month, and they're not renewing. They've already switched to another software firm. Can you help me reach out to them? Talk to them? I'm willing to cut an extra 10% off the price. I could see the desperation behind the thin layer of forced confidence. I curled my lips slightly, a faint mocking smile, like a cold breeze skimming over a lake. Go talk to them yourself. What does that have to do with me? David lowered his head, regret flashing through his eyes. Last year, I offended 2 of the people in charge, he said, voice softer now. The market was tough, and they wanted a 10% discount, but my company was struggling too, so I refused. Now the contracts are up, and they're not renewing. For some reason, a bunch of other major clients have left too. He looked up at me, eyes begging. You used to manage those accounts. Can you help me reach out? I'll give you a cut of the deal if it works out. I laughed inwardly. Fool. The software market had been brutally competitive for the last 2 years. Other companies slashed prices aggressively, while he, running a tiny firm with nothing unique to offer, acted cocky and refused to bend. And now, he was paying the price. If you're here to buy thermalware, you're welcome, I said. Anything else? I can't help I paused, deliberately emphasizing each word, the smile still on my lips. After all, anything business-related was improper. Your own words, remember? So why come to me now? David's face turned pale, like he'd just been slapped. He opened his mouth, his voice rushed, scrambling to explain. Claire, I didn't mean it like that. Back then, But I didn't let him finish. The insults he hurled at me back then, when he called me trash just to protect his mistress, were still sharp, like thorns lodged in my chest. I picked up the internal phone and asked security to escort him out of the company. After David was escorted out of my office by security, I returned to my desk. My phone buzzed. A message from the executive I'd hired, a sharp, punctual woman, showing a long list of new incoming orders. I laughed, the sound echoing through the small office, as if wiping away the last trace of David. Once my company was running smoothly, I quietly partnered with friends to register a new software firm, operating almost exactly like David's. Over the past 2 years, I had patiently recruited the best engineers from his team. The major contracts, the clients he once bragged about, were now mine. And David, in his pathetic cluelessness, had come to ask me to talk to those very clients, as if asking me to rob myself of my own victory. 2 years later, David's company went bankrupt. My life, on the other hand, had changed. I began a new relationship with Ethan, a university physics professor who was also divorced. We met at a mutual friend's party. He was quiet, but every word he spoke was sharp, funny, like a glass of red wine, rich and unexpectedly delightful. On the surface, we seemed like opposites, but in conversation, we were perfect. He was the kind of man who could make me smile with just a witty comment about relativity. We didn't talk constantly. He was busy with research. I was busy with the garment factory and the software company. But when he had time off, I'd rearrange my schedule, and we'd walk together down golden-leafed streets, or sit by the fireplace as he talked about the universe, like each star was a story. 2 years later, we got married, and I became pregnant. The day Ethan took me for a prenatal checkup, we unexpectedly ran into David and Ava, chasing after an ambulance. On the stretcher was a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, covered in blood, eyes closed, motionless. The ambulance rushed into the emergency room. David and Ava collapsed on the floor, their sobs ripping through the stillness of the hospital. I stood there, Ethan's hand gripping mine tightly, his eyes filled with concern. But I simply shook my head. I didn't say a word. After my appointment, I overheard people talking and finally understood. A little boy, around 5 or 6, had fallen from a high-rise balcony. He was rushed in but didn't make it. The image of David and Ava chasing after the gurney flashed in my mind. Was that their child? Later, I learned the full story through scattered whispers from friends. Ava and Patricia, addicted to parties with friends, had locked the apartment and left the 2 kids alone. There was no food. The children were hungry, calling for their mom to no avail. The boy, recalling a video he'd once seen, climbed onto the window ledge, trying to use a tree outside to get down and look for her. His little sister, just a toddler, helped him by pushing a chair over, but he lost his footing and fell straight from the balcony to the ground. The girl's panicked cries alerted the neighbors. They called the police and an ambulance, but it was too late. The boy didn't survive. Child Protective Services launched an investigation. Ava was interrogated for child neglect. I sat there in silence, unable to speak, my chest heavy as if carrying a stone. A small, innocent life, destroyed by their recklessness. Time passed, like a river quietly carrying the debris of the past. I heard that David and Ava eventually divorced, and custody of their daughter went to David. The news reached me like a breeze, passing through and fading without leaving a ripple. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't want to know. My life had taken a new turn, one filled with soft sunlight and blooming flowers in the villa garden, a quiet reminder that I was free. 2 years later, I ran into David by chance on a bustling street in the city center. I was walking arm in arm with Ethan, my husband. Our daughter, little Lily, was cradled in Ethan's arms, her big round eyes laughing as he lifted her into the air. I smiled, gently smoothing Lily's curly hair. We were on our way to the mall to pick out some winter clothes for her. Then I saw David standing still on the sidewalk. He looked at me, eyes dull, carrying a flicker of the past. I paused for just a moment. Our eyes met. No words were exchanged. None were needed. I turned to Ethan. I didn't look back. I walked on, hand in hand with my husband, as Lily's laughter rang out, bright and clear like wind chimes. Every step I took was a rhythm of freedom. Every breath, a quiet affirmation that I had left the past behind. No turning back, no glancing over my shoulder, because my happiness was ahead of me, in Ethan's arms, in Lily's smile, in the days I now get to rewrite, page by page, on my own terms. I once thought happiness was a destination, but now I know happiness is the path we choose, step by step, gently and freely. If you've ever had to walk away from a painful past to build something better, tell me in the comments. What does freedom mean to you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.